House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
Everything's relative on House to Home, everybody. Liz and Gina here. We're probably related at some point. Actually, Liz and I are definitely related. I'm related to her wonderful husband, John. Gina, I know we are related. We're related in the spirit of believing in our island's economy and in really, really having faith in our real estate system. So I'm always pleased to share the
And
Zoom call
its
with you ladies.
people, economy and its people.
There you go. And Gina is nursing a slightly sore throat, so I'm gonna do my job as a dutiful Zoom call host and try and keep you to speak the least. So we're gonna save your voice until the really in stuff that I know you're emotional about. But speaking of emotion, first we want to thank you, si Diyos Masi, maraming salamat po to our entire beloved island community for coming out to the zombie run, right, Liz?
That's right. It was a very successful event. We had vendors, we had food trucks, we had the wall climbing, they had a little choo-choo train moving around. The kids just were ecstatic. And then we had runners, of course. We had a 2K and then we had a 5K. And then, of course, we had the haunted house. So there was a lot of snow cones, popcorn that was free, fruit that was free. We had a lot of positive feedback regarding the event. And of course, it's for a worthy cause for the Children's Ark. And again, I guess Gina can talk about our goal and our mission of Children's Ark. But thank you for all of those who showed. It was very successful. And we look forward to another for 2025 to prepare and come out for the zombie run. Again, another fun event.
This is how awesome the organizers at the Children's Ark are, ladies and gentlemen. We're already looking at 2025. We're already looking at Halloween 2025. We're that ahead in the future. So
Oh yeah,
and like we
absolutely.
said, yeah, Gina, you mentioned this at the press conference that we had for the zombie run and everything like that. There was a very distinct and achievable goal that you and your husbands looked to when you guys formed this organization.
In our line of work in real estate, and this is a Remax Micronesia venture, right? The whole concept of the Children's Ark is sponsored by all the Remax agents and brokers. And in our line of work, we come across too many families that we'd love to help, but for one reason or another, economic conditions on Guam, they just cannot qualify to borrow money at the bank to buy housing here. And I think there's a Chamber of Commerce letter written by Teo that we were reading the other day that kind of describes what's going on. But the Children's Ark, our initial goal was that we would find a way to make affordable housing available here because Liz, myself, my husband Leonard, we had volunteered on with Habitat. We were Habitat volunteers for quite a while. And so seeing how Habitat is able to deliver affordable housing here in Guam, we decided that there's a need for more organizations that want to work towards that because, to have a stable home is fundamental to families here. And so that was our original goal. And reading that article, it really touched our heart because we realized, yeah, this is, what Tay is talking about is absolutely true. Liz and myself have been talking, we bring it up as often as we can. And, sometimes I know people get tired of listening to us, but we have made it really clear that seeing what we see, we understand that here in Guam, and he talks about this in his write-up, he says, the cost of material, the cost of labor, and we want to add in the cost of interest rates. Those three things, we really realistically, as individuals, as a community, the government cannot do anything about the cost of material or labor. This is just, the government could be instrumental in allowing more labor to come to Guam, but to a large degree, it's not something you could really work on without the help of the federal government. But there are
These are those
things
market
that
forces beyond our control. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. We've been advocating that our government agency, our government of Guam, they can be instrumental in doing things that can help our community. And I'm sure Liz can touch on that. There's a lot of things that our local government here could do that would absolutely support development and affordable housing.
Yeah, Liz, it is interesting because I know when I was growing up, obviously I'm a little bit younger than the both of you, but we always had in social studies books that concept of the American dream, and like if you put money aside in your younger years and you and your spouse, kind of save up and you work hard, you will be able to have hopefully a very nice house. And the whole white picket fence with the dog in the front and that whole thing. The reality is these days, because of the economy and because of natural disasters and the pandemic, you can put money aside, you can save, you can have a fairly decent paying job. You still might not be able to afford even a baseline decent house, right? And that is kind of very unfortunate.
Well, nowadays, there's so many factors, the interest rate, the rising economy, the buildup, and the current market conditions are prices have definitely gone up, but factored into the pricing of them, the homes going up had to do with construction costs, the limited labor force. There's so many different factors. The Guam Association just did an interview the other day, senators and the two Congress candidates, the incumbent and the one that's vying for the position. And a lot of the talk, and Gina and I have talked about this before, that what we need to spur the building homes on Guam would be some incentives from the government. Years ago, there was a private venture. Gina talked about this, that Kaiser came to Guam and they built all that homes, but it was a venture, a collaborative effort between a private venture, Kaiser, and the government. And they were able to come in and build all those many homes. Why can't we do that now? There are stumbling blocks for the locals in terms of building, but some of those happen to be stumbling blocks that have to do with the permitting process, with all the layers of bureaucracy that individuals have to go through. And if only the government stepped in to make that so much easier for the permitting. I think even Gina, when she was building a home, it took her 3 months to get a building permit. Why? So
It took
six
me
months, 8 months. It took her 8 months to get a building permit, but there
You
were
could have
other
had a
factors.
baby in that time.
Exactly. So it's got to be a
Sorry.
collaborative. It's got to be a collaborative effort between the government and the private sector. I mean, we can continue to scream about this, but even the senators that were being interviewed, many of them had good ideas. A lot of them talked about uh, incentives. There are federal programs that some private companies are taking advantage of where the federal government pays 20% for the infrastructure to build, which helps them put in the project. And there was something else I heard that there was, I think, up to 70% of of funds that were contributed towards a project. So these are things that have to be explored. And I think one of the things too with the military buildup, usually when a big company comes in, the local community will say, okay, yes, you can come in. What are you going to do for us? How can we work together where there's some funds set aside to contribute to the infrastructure, to contribute to the schools, to contribute in different areas that's needed on the island. So I think there are solutions that could be had. It's a question of implementation and someone with the powers that be to push it along. And we do have senators and our Congress. Some of them have been in there a long time, as Gina and I are talking. They've been there a long time, and they're still bringing up the same topics that they brought up a while back. So why hasn't there been something done? So you see Gina and I always out there speaking about different issues, and it's not about our pocketbooks, and it doesn't line our pockets as realtors. It's about how is it helping our community? What's right? What's fair? How do we make a difference in our community? And I think that's what we do on the show, trying to make a difference for our community. And again, we should keep prodding our government officials along to say, hey, this is a possibility. Please look into it. But talking is cheap. Implementation. See, I always talk about the private sector. The results is what we look for. Sometimes in government, it's the process that's focused on instead of the results. So we've got to turn this around.
And that's also interesting because, when you think of just the business of allowing houses to be built, for land to be acquired, for structures to be built on top of that, for them to be listed, there's an entire ecosystem of, surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, realtors like yourselves, uh, construction, obviously, subcontractors. These are all organizations that could make money on the government side. They're all agencies that could benefit from fees and approvals that would go into this and everything. To your point, Gina, if the process was geared towards a way of just facilitating more transactions instead of like being slowed to a snail's pace and maybe only having a few transactions per month, right?
And that's the thing. Those are really the things that the government can control. And the reason it's important to get the government involved is because the community cannot, this needs to be a partnership, needs to be a partnership between our government of Guam, and the officials that head government of Guam, and our community. Because there are a lot of private, the federal government just came out and said, listen, we're not going to build houses anymore. Because when we do it, we can't do a good job. It's costing us 900,000 to a million per home. That's ridiculous. So they're reaching out to, the federal government is now reaching out to the private community and saying, help us out build houses for our military families. The government of Guam needs to step up and say, hey, we also need to look at building houses for our local families, our working class families. And these are the things that the government of Guam can control. Over the years, when the buildup started occurring, the government was instrumental in adding in more regulations. And when you say regulation, you really are talking about additional fees. Well, maybe you don't need those fees anymore, Gov Guam, because guess what? You've been making more money. The government of Guam, and with a 5% GRT, the government of Guam has actually been collecting more money every year since the Trump tax cuts than they needed to run the government. And what have they done with that money? I am suggesting that the government look at installing infrastructure, because developers, the cost for a developer to put in the infrastructure and go through the process of getting permits, this is why a lot of developers are just done with us. They're done. I know a lot of people who had projects geared for Guam, and they've decided, you know what? The processing here, it's terrible. The bureaucracy of getting permits and going through the government agencies is about 2 to 3 years to get GLUC approval and get our permits. And they basically packed it up and left. There's a few projects that the appraisers and people in the real estate community are aware of. So
And it
these
all
are the
starts with the
things.
developers, right? They are kind of like the bedrock of this ecosystem, right?
Well, the government doesn't do anything to encourage developers.
Mm.
In fact, it's the opposite. So, we want to ask the government, look at taking care of your people, because the military buildup is coming and we want it to come. And can you imagine, if it's already difficult now for rental housing is so expensive for our working class families, and buying homes is expensive for our working class families. The government could be instrumental in providing infrastructure, water, sewer, power. That will ease up the cost with the developers, because the government can't pay for material. You can't pay for labor. You could help bring in the labor, but you can't pay for it. And you can also ease up on the regulations to get a permit, streamline it. I think John Duenas at one of our hearings said, why can't we get a building permit in 30 days or 60 days? Why can't that be a law, that these agencies have to look through these documents and issue that permit within 30 to 60 days? And I say, yeah, Gov Guam, do that. Make this possible, and you will encourage more people to build on Guam.
Okay, Liz, let me give you the final word because again, this wonderful paper, this article, this op-ed opinion piece, which was put out by Teo on behalf of the Guam Chamber of Commerce, wonderfully written, and obviously you two read it with great interest. What were some of the most salient points to you, Liz, that really like kind of like shed light on the true nature of Guam's housing market?
I mean, he talked about the history when he came back, and it's true. A while back, you could probably buy a home for 120, 200, 250 a while back used to be the average home
You
prices.
haven't heard
And
those numbers in a while.
And they
yeah, and
won't come
now
back.
Yeah, and now it's like they're saying it's 420, 450, but even that, trying to get that, the brand new homes now are about between 5 and 600,000. And I was just looking through our MLS system, I'm seeing more in the 800 price range, and I know our local families cannot afford
That's
800,000.
approaching
So
like Honolulu level, right? Because like
yes,
Hawaii properties, like everybody always says
right.
1.2, 1.4, 2.1
You can understand the 1.1, 1.2, which would be
million.
the yeah, but now we're seeing more homes in that price range. And the problem is, if it sits on the market for a while, more than likely those prices will either drop or the owners will give incentives. But I mean, he hit it on the mark that we're losing people to go stateside to have better opportunities. The other thing we're seeing is young families are moving in with other families to cut on their housing costs, or they're moving in with their parents to cut on those costs. So yes, I think we need, the key is the government here to try to help make it happen rather than the bureaucratic red tape to make it. So even what is it? A number of years back, they talked about technology, utilizing technology to speed up our process. Well, there was a snag with that where I think there was a suit involved. So 4 years later, we're still at step one. Nothing happened.
Hmm.
There's got to be other ways to deal with that to help our local families. It's
Okay.
always a big concern.
And just as a parting shot, I mean, it is really interesting, I guess is the diplomatic way of putting it. When, we had what we saw in the middle of the pandemic and coming out of that, where we had this massive brain drain on Guam, which is, you had a lot of young, talented, supported people who left to the States because of, cheaper costs of living or more opportunity, the ability to make more money out there. You've got people now who are bolting Guam simply because they can't afford to live here anymore. And these are people who want to make this their home. Like my cousin, one of my best friends growing up, had to uproot his family because he's like, I can't afford to live on Guam anymore. And that really is sad.
It is really sad. And I guess over time, we just have to work with our local leaders in the community to step it up. Got to make a change. Otherwise, we're going to lose more people.
Okay, so bonus question, Gina, sorry. So is this an opportunity that somebody either in the public sector or some enterprising entrepreneur can attempt to solve, or is this just we're identifying a problem at this point and it's a bottleneck that needs to be unplugged?
It's everything. It's a bottleneck that needs to be unplugged. It's people in the community, but most importantly, the government of Guam and our elected officials. We need to get them on board that affordable housing is probably more important than nitrates are important, but but without people, I mean, if we're losing too many of our families, then what is the point? And I believe these senators, once they get elected, and I hope we have a better crew come this election, that they will be advocates of promoting the idea of building affordable housing here and advocates of promoting the idea that the government of Guam should participate and find mechanisms to make the building of affordable housing more profitable. Yeah, I'm using that word, profitable for developers, because if it isn't, they're not interested. I don't want to work for free, neither do developers. So we have to find a way to entice them to build in our community for our families. And
Absolutely.
it's going to have to be a public-private joint venture. It can't just be the private sector again worrying about this. Our government has a responsibility to take care of its people. And that means you have to have already realized that this is a crisis and you need to solve it.
Okay, well, that's very, very important. You know what's also very important? Honey and lemon, because ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing wrong with your TV set, nothing wrong with your laptop right now. You don't have to turn up the volume. Gina has a very, very painful sore throat, so we are gonna let you guys rest. Gina, hot tea.
Ginger and turmeric, got it.
There you go. And Liz, always a good cup of coffee is always a good thing.
You got it.
All right. Rest
Thank
up,
you,
ladies. We'll talk to you
Jason.
soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jade. Thank you.
House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.